We're going to talk about how the power of little 1% improvements across the board can have a massive impact on the overall cash that you keep at the end of the year, and obviously your net profit as well, which drives that cash. So in this example template, we're going to model it out step by step, and you'll be able to see which levers maybe you should improve in your own business. So the key things you need to enter here are in the green. Units sold monthly. So if you're a service business, that would be the number of recurring clients. Average billable amount would be, the retainer price for those clients. Or if you're a product business, that would just be, the price of your product. So you can do either. COGS per unit is obviously, you're depending on what one unit is in your business, you could probably get a rough approximation of what your current gross margin is and work out, what your COGS percentage is. This example, I've just applied a 10% to our average billable amount. So, assuming for this model, which we're going to call an agency, is COGS is roughly 10%, is what I'm assuming. And then monthly overhead, it's about 10K. I've just assumed that's about 20% of revenue, which is a rough, good benchmark. So this example, you can actually throw in your real numbers here. So what your average client numbers are, what the average retainer is, what your average cost of sales is, and then your monthly overhead figure as well to actually input hard data so you can see the real impact on your cash balance. And then this just auto calcs. So anything in white, don't touch. Anything in green, you can enter your real data. And then that also just calcs out what your daily revenue is. So this is where it gets interesting. The final two things you need to enter are your current annual net cash flow. So if you go to the statement of cash flows for the past 12 months, so in Xero reports, you'll be able to get a statement of cash flows. Have a look at what the past 12 months number is, and also throw in your past 12 months net profit. So this will be from your net profit for the past 12 months, and this will be your statement of cash flows. You can see profits higher than net cash flows. Classic question of, my profit's X, where's the cash? This takes into account other impacts. For example, if you're holding high age receivables, that's where your cash is hiding. So it won't actually have hit your bank account. So even though your profit's showing that, if you've got a lot of people that owe you money, you won't be holding the cash. So that traditionally is lower than your net profit. Product businesses, obviously with high inventory, might be tied up there. There might be other like capital expenditure stuff that you've been spending money on. That's why these numbers aren't always exact. In a perfect world, maybe they would be, but that's why it's a little bit lower there. So now let's get into the fun stuff. I talk about the changes that you're going to make to improve your business and actually see what the impact is on your cash flow. So for this one, we're going to just action 1% across the board. So we're currently selling 10K retainers. If we add 1% to that, that's only an extra $100 per retainer that we're going to charge. If we slightly increase our volume 1%, so that's 0.5 of a client, which obviously it doesn't make sense, but maybe it's a 5K retainer, right? COGS reduction. If we can find a slight reduction in costs, change our subcontractors, maybe bring some roles in-house so the subcontractors aren't as high, we can save a little there. Overheads reduction. So obviously having a look, I do this annually, go through with a fine-tooth comb, see what the big costs are, find some 1% changes there that we can reduce, which really isn't that much. Like for overheads, we should be cutting more, and I often do, but stay with me here. And you can see across these top four, which are like all on the P&L, these ones, price increase increases your revenue, volume plays into that, COGS is on your P&L, and then overheads is the rest of your expenses. You can see that impact per month here, which is a pretty simple calc of how much we're selling per month times by that variable impact. So $5,000 a month if we put our prices up by 1%. If we sell slightly more and then our slightly more of these retainers, you can see that 5K retainer is dropping. Same with COGS. COGS reduction across all of our 50 clients is $500. And then overheads is going to be that set amount. There's no multiplier effect to overhead because that's applied across the whole business. So that's only one. Again, all you have to do is throw in the green things here. Don't think too much about it. It's just what percent you think you can change, and you can see that impact per month. Then all we're doing is extrapolating that by 12 across the full year, and we can see that impact on our cash flow multiply as the months roll on. So 1% improvement to our price has had a huge flow through effect of $5,000 a month, $60,000 for the year. And that's impacting both our cash flow and our profit, which is awesome. And similarly for the volume, it's going to be $60,000 as well, because that 5K retainer times 12 is 60 and 6K and 12K. So these little 1% improvements have a huge annual impact in total of $138,000 for the year. So that is a massive impact on the extra cash sitting in your bank account at year end. The bigger you are, and even the more percentages that you increase, the bigger that gets. So let's say we action a 5% price increase across the board, which a lot of clients do for like inflation every year. That impact on cash flow goes up to $300K, which is amazing. That is life-changing amount of money. You could do so much with that $300K. That might be the opportunity cost that you need to action this. You might be leaving money on the table with all of your clients. Price is the biggest lever that you can do to help improve. For volume, say let's increase our volume by 5% or 10%, you can see that massive outsized impact. But the problem with the volume increase is it's not as easy just to increase our volume 10%. We need to sell a hell of a lot more, and our costs do go up. If you're a service business like an agency, you might need to hire team members in order to help service those extra clients, which means overhead reduction actually doesn't happen at all, and you might have more overheads. So it's really hard just to double your business in this thought exercise. So the volume one is harder to just jack up, whereas prices, you can just name your price increase and it flows through to your bottom line, which is really powerful. So we'll put them all back to 1% for this template, but you can see the huge impact on cash flow. And then once you've put your past 12 months cash flow here of what happened last year, then we can model out what these changes are you're going to make this year to see what your new cash flow will be for this year and your new profit number here for your business. And that's kind of looking at with a bit of a future focus about the levers we're going to pull here to improve your business. Now, those are all the P&L things. Working capital, which is all the things sitting on your balance sheet, which a lot of founders don't think about and it's hidden. These are the levers you can pull to find cash in your business. Reduction in debtors days. So chase and collect your money quicker, or have collect up front in advance to move your debtors day down to 0. That would be the best, right? But assuming you've got debtor days and you reduce them a little bit, you can get 25 grand on an annualized basis if you can collect all your stuff quicker. So I'm always looking at age receivables, always looking at how we can reduce our cash conversion and reducing our debtor days, or reducing the time it takes for us to collect our money off our clients has a massive impact on your cash too. For inventory-based businesses, the biggest lever is stock days. So making sure you reduce that and keep that as low as possible, trying to keep as low inventory as you can and turn it over quickly in order to keep more cash and have more cash sitting in your bank account. And then finally, increase creditor days. This is slightly unethical if you just stop paying your suppliers and take longer to pay them. That's not a lever I like to focus on. I like to pay our suppliers and have good relationships. But if you're in a cash crunch, maybe you need to pull that one and play around with that. And here we've just modeled out what those annual impacts are here as a result of that. So I'll put them all back to 1% here just for our thought exercise. And you can see all of those things added up together is a 7% impact. Obviously, if you're a service business, that will be 0. You won't have a stock days. So let's say a 6% impact. But if we want to have a bigger impact across the board, maybe you want to have a 5% price increase and leave everything else at 1%. And this shows you a really interesting impact of the biggest drivers of profit and cash flow in any business. Here's what they are. The number one is price, because a 1%, a 5% increase in price goes straight to your bottom line, straight to your margin. So it is the biggest lever, which is why everyone rattles on about it. Easy to say, to do it, harder to actually do it. And that's what I help people do, walk them through that process to improve and to then be able to increase our prices. Cost of sales per unit is the next most powerful profit driver. That's about getting efficient. So, if we can reduce the costs it take to deliver whatever we're doing, we can deliver on that retainer with less team members and less contractors. We are a more efficient business, and that is a huge driver of profit because that can be applied across every retainer every month in perpetuity. So that is the second biggest lever of profit. And similarly for, obviously for a product-based business, if you can source a super cheap product and have a high markup, that's where you're going to make a huge amount of profit, which is the power of brand. Number 3 is volume. So this is obviously super powerful. If you can double your client list, you can double your revenue, but there's extra cost and capacity strain, especially in the world of agencies and service businesses. That comes with more cost. Your systems start to break. So it's still absolutely powerful, and we want to focus on growing that volume, but it isn't the most powerful. The price is an immediate light switch. We get more margin straight away, but the volume is obviously we want to grow everything in tandem, but that is still a super powerful one. And then fourth on the power rankings is fixed costs. You can kind of see it here from the annual impact of the overheads reduction. Once you've done it once, it's that's it. It's set in time. Once you've trimmed that as low as possible, it's just about keeping it in balance. So that is somewhere where I go looking for low-hanging fruit when I first start with clients, but the bigger multipliers are the ones above in terms of price, cost of sales per unit, and then volume as well. And hopefully this puts into impact just how powerful the price increase is, because that is by far the biggest lever you have. Then obviously volume is super important, but getting more efficient, I think, is the overlooked one. It doesn't actually, 1% cost of sales reduction here doesn't truly show you how big a deal getting more efficient and delivering your stuff, your retainers quicker with less staff. That has, as I said, it's the second highest driver of profit. Awesome. Hopefully this helps put it into perspective about some of the levers you can pull to improve your cash flow. There's not that many, right? Price increase, volume increase, cost of sales reduction, reducing your overhead and your other costs, and then on your balance sheet or your working capital reduce your age receivables, so chase your money quicker, reduce your stock days if you have products, and then increase your creditor days, which you can try, but obviously you want to have a good supplier relationship. And that's it. Hopefully this gives you some ideas about how to improve your cash flow for the year ahead and maybe where some of that cash is hiding in your business at the moment. Thanks for watching.